Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, we've already heard how Nicola Sturgeon surrounded herself with, and we're going to use the word, experts who weren't experts at all. They were nowhere near experts in epidemiology or in infectious disease control or anything like that. They were dentists and GPs and whatever. And that she did ignore the one person on the team who was an infectious disease epidemiologist, Professor Woolhouse. But it now is revealed that there is another professor who is a true expert in this field. His name is Hugh Pennington, Professor Hugh Pennington, who advised the UK government as well. He tried to give advice to the Scottish government and he was ignored. His advice was rejected and ignored. And he's claiming it is because he is not a nationalist. Because apparently, regardless of what your qualifications and experience are, if you're not a nationalist, then you have no input at all on the future of Scotland and on the safety of the Scottish people. This is a man whose advice could have saved lives, but they chose to go another way. Because his advice wasn't the advice, again, that they wanted to hear. Let's have a look. So once again, we have this coterie at the top, Sturgeon and a little cabal who are deliberately ignoring the experts because the experts don't give them what they want to hear. They want to politicise COVID. They want to push it for their independence aim. And when the experts come up and say, no, this is the correct thing to do, this is absolutely the best thing to do, they're being rejected because it doesn't suit the politics. Meanwhile, the ones that do suit the politics are the ones least qualified to give any expert advice. Is it any wonder people died in the numbers they did? And if expert advice was rejected and advice was taken from non-experts deliberately to push politics, then it is undoubtedly corporate homicide. We'll have a look at this. Nicola Sturgeon spurned my COVID advice because I'm not a nationalist, says one of the UK's top scientists. Professor Hugh Pennington said he watched with growing dismay as Jason Leach, a dentist and a failed one at that, Gregor Smith, a GP, basically a gatekeeper for people who know what they're doing, and Catherine Calderwood, who's a gynecologist. Well, I think there's a lot of... she was working with a lot of them on that particular board, wasn't she? She said they got it wrong and wrong again. And with input from Devi Sridhar, who's an academic and a personal trainer. Not someone who is an expert in this field. Unlike, for example, Pennington and Woolhouse, who, rather strangely, are experts, but whose advice was deliberately ignored. And in the case of Woolhouse, they did the exact opposite of what he advised. Because what he advised wouldn't advance independence. That's the simple reason. Anyway, one of Britain's leading scientists have made the damning allegation that Nicola Sturgeon ignored his offer of expert advice during the COVID pandemic because of his pro-UK views. So her politicisation rejects the advice and kills people. Professor Hugh Pennington, a bacteriologist and a trusted household name, said he wrote to the former First Minister to offer his services. He wasn't even dignified with a reply. He watched with growing dismay as the SNP government's experts, and using the word experts incorrectly there, he said, got it wrong again and again. And Professor Pennington, who worked alongside the 1960s team, which discovered the original human coronavirus. So, if there's a man who knows what he's talking about, it's Pennington. Told the Scottish Mail on Sunday, I can only come to the conclusion that Miss Sturgeon and her government didn't want my advice because of my pro-UK views. What other reason could there be? I'm going to tell you, Mr. Pennington, or Professor Pennington, that there is another alternative explanation. And that is because even though you are undoubtedly a world expert, probably one of the most expert people in the, literally in that field, the man who helped discover coronavirus in the first place, the last thing she wanted was advice that meant that people could just get on with it, can do their thing, that it wasn't this, it wasn't that, and it wasn't something else. Advice that wouldn't help her politicise and weaponise for her the best opportunity ever to get independence. Because not only could she force Scotland to become compliant to her will, she could also utilise it to eradicate her political enemies, those who voted for unionism. In her mind, the elderly. And she could utilise that to genocide the old, should she choose to do so. Careful about what I'm saying. And that is why she did not want advice from true experts, but had to take advice from people who aren't experts at all and pretend that they were. The Scottish Government response was led by gynaecologist Catherine Calderwood and GP Gregor Smith and Jason Leach, who's a failed dentist. Professor Pennington also questioned the input from Devi Sridhar, who is a public health academic and has never worked in it, who then also became Miss Sturgeon's personal trainer. Because of course, when you're dealing with millions of people and their, in their physical health during a pandemic, it's very important that you take medical advice from a personal trainer. Unbelievable. And if she did, and if any decision was made by the advice of Devi Sridhar, then that again is got to be malpractice. That has got to be prosecutable. The UK COVID inquiry's lead counsel, Jamie Dawson KC, last week noted that there'd been commentary over the fact that Miss Sturgeon's teams were experts in neither public health nor infectious diseases. South of the border, the UK response was led by Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance and Jonathan Van Tam, all of whom were far more experienced in the field. But again, Sturgeon doesn't want experts, doesn't want people who know what they're talking about, because they will tell her the things that she doesn't want to hear. They will tell her to do this, and that won't push the powerful megalomaniac, the views she has, to the complete removal of Scotland from the UK and set herself up as Queen Nick. It has become clear Miss Sturgeon wants to pursue a different strategy from England for political reasons. Discussing options with her chief of staff, who said she was itching for a rammy with the UK government in order to think of something other than sick people. In other words, I don't care about the people of Scotland. Let's just go and listen to what these people say. Might as well listen to the bin lorry driver. There's a guy who works down the chip shop and some fella you met down the pub last Tuesday. They're as much an expert in the field as the likes of Smith and Leach and Cunningham and all of these people. All of them. They're all the same. The former First Minister will be grilled at the inquiry Wednesday. We've all got to watch this on Wednesday, whatever happens. Definitely want that woman up there. And now they know what to ask. It's going to be a grilling and a half. Although it will be a lot of, I canny remember, it wasn't me. A big boy did it and ran away to Westminster. The scientific expert previously chaired both the probe into the world's worst E. coli outbreak, which claimed 20 lives in Scotland in 1996. I remember that. And a public inquiry into a 2005 E. coli outbreak in Wales. In doing so, he became the only non-judicial figure ever to chair a public inquiry in the UK. This guy is beyond the expert level, isn't he? He's an expert in his field. He's a man who helped discover coronavirus in the first place. He has many, many years' experience and has led the inquiries into previous outbreaks. There is no one better suited to take advice from than this man. And they ignored him because of what he would have told them. He said, I said to myself, not again, as I watched experts get it wrong and then get it wrong again. But what was there to do? I'd already offered my help to Miss Sturgeon and her government. I wrote to her. I'm still waiting for a reply. The Emeritus Professor at Aberdeen University criticised the choice of experts and Miss Sridhar's role in particular, saying a relationship as this suddenly gets us away from the science and puts it on a personal level which is inappropriate. He said he felt like jumping up and down in frustration with the experts confidently stated at their press conferences that they were focusing on people with symptoms. He said if you focus on symptomatic people, clearly you miss those non-symptomatic. This could and did include people such as care workers or visitors or new residents moving into care homes. You will be taking the virus into care homes, and we know once it gets into an environment like that, it spreads alarmingly. He knew, and they knew They knew. That's why they were going, we're looking at symptomatic people rather than non-symptomatic. Because if they were looking at non-symptomatic, they knew they couldn't put people into care homes. And yet that's what she needed to happen, because she needed to make sure that all those elderly union voting people died. That man knows what he's talking about. That man was never listened to because they were frightened by what he would say. Well, thank heavens he's saying it now. I'm coming up. The longer this goes on and the more that comes out, the worse it looks. Nicola Sturgeon is increasingly being seen as a power-mad, megalomaniac, narcissistic sociopath, hell-bent on getting independence and utilising this pandemic, weaponising it, and using it to push her political aims. And she did not care how many people died in order to achieve it. And we can tell this from the very fact that the best experts in the world were basically ignored, rejected, not even given answers to requests, simply because she knew that the advice they give would not push her political ambitions. Murder by political decree. I'm going to stop. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Goodbye.